All right, so I've shared this before in the CTMU group. I asked a few YouTubers about this specific problem. I've asked around and I've thought about this for a full year now, and I still am not getting really an answer that I understand. I've gotten some explanations from Chris Langan himself. I've gotten some explanations from some other people, but it didn't really connect with me. And so I just want to understand how these dynamics work with conspansion. I buy into most of what the CTMU is saying as a super tautology. I don't think it's nonsense. I think that most of it makes sense, but this is just one part of it that I still do not understand. And I think it might have something to do with the fact that I'm not really synthesizing my knowledge. I'm not putting this together with maybe the other principles like syndifionesis or map or MU or something like that. And maybe once I take that bigger picture view, I'll understand it. But right now, I don't understand it. So my question is, I don't understand how two points can interact in the conspansive manifold. And so I'll explain exactly what my conception of the conspansive manifold is right now. And then maybe that will make it more understandable to other people where I'm coming from and where the holes in my knowledge is, where I'm misinterpreting something that Chris Langan is saying, or something like that. So this is my conception of how the expansive manifold works. This is our view of a moving particle right here. So it's in the middle here, it's in the far left corner, and then it's sort of in the middle right here, just as an example. This is how we see a ball maybe moving around in some kind of a space. It's represented by the square. The ectomorphic view, so this is the expanding rubber sheet universe. This has the red and then the green and the yellow inside this, I guess, frame of reference right here. This is the first sort of picosecond. One could say this is the second picosecond. This is the third picosecond. Um, but this is like the rate of rescaling right here. So the first, second, and third phase of rescaling. From the perspective of the object as it moves through time, um, this remains still. This remains static by itself. This is from the perspective of the object. And then everything else is expanding around it. And so this is how we view the universe. When we are viewing the universe outside of us from our limited perspective on Earth, we are seeing the universe expand at an increasing rate. So we can see that this rescaling happens on a percentage. Um, it happens on a percentage kind of a basis. There's no actual consistent scale that it works with. So there's a ratio that the universe expands at. And so that's why it's expanding at an increasing rate, because the metric that we're measuring at our individual level, at our individual sort of vantage point right here, our metric is actually shrinking, as I understand it. So I think I'm saying that right. But just on the outer edges, you can see that there's more of an expansion happening compared to the inside. So the green and the yellow, this expansion is not as great as the green and the red. That's the ectomorphic model, the ectomorphic semi-model. The endomorphic semi-model works like this, right? Now, this is from a global vantage point. This is not from the vantage point of an individual staying in one place. This is from the perspective of the universe. So we have the red and the red and the red here. It's all consistent. So we have new states that are forming within that red circle. So the green and then the yellow, but nothing's actually moving. So from our view right here is a moving particle, but from the endomorphic perspective, nothing's actually moving. Everything is just rescaling within that larger universal perspective. And these two things, these two semi-models can work together perfectly coherently. This makes sense. Now, this is my interpretation of how conspansion works. I might be wrong because I don't understand how two things can interact with each other. And so maybe I just need to reread the 2002 paper. Maybe I need to reread some other paper that Chris Langan wrote. I've made it through most of his papers. I'm still working on quantum metamechanics. I have a few more pages left for that one. Um, But I don't understand how to make this same chart that I made over here for two particles touching, for example. So our view of two particles touching is two things from the outside right here. They get closer and closer together, and then they touch, right? I don't know how to represent that in the ectomorphic or the endomorphic view, because from the endomorphic view, if I have two particles that are right here, and this is the global vantage point right here, or maybe I could say this is like a part of a global vantage point that's not really changing. So you could say that this black circle here is actually this yellow circle, for example. Um, but if I have two particles inside of this larger circle here, this larger circle isn't changing. Um, but then as the state changes, we can only have new states form within those red circles, and then we can only have new states formed within those green circles. And so these two particles aren't coming together. And so this is my point of confusion. How do we get two points to actually touch each other um, in the endomorphic model? I don't get it. Um, yeah, if I can't, the thing is, like, this is what's really going on, right? The universe is a self-representational entity. If I can't really make an endomorphic view of what's going on, I can't understand the ectomorphic view either. I don't know how to I even model that. So, um, this is so I made some more diagrams here. This is kind of where my thought process is heading. It looks like um so the red is like time equals t equals one, and then the green is t equals two, and the yellow is t equals three. It looks like the universe here with the black circle with the white background. This contains all sorts of these states here, like these red circles here, and then it goes down into these blue circles, right? So this looks a lot like how the universe acts. It looks like the universe um, expanding. So you can see that if this is Earth, you would see everything else falling away from us, and it would happen at an increasing rate. That makes sense from this perspective. But at the same time, I don't see how like none of these things are actually touching each other. There's no way for these things to interact at all. So I thought that, well, maybe if I think further back in time, there's all these circles that are bigger, and then maybe they get smaller and smaller, and then they turn into this. Um, Maybe this has something to do with it. The fact that all of these circles overlapped towards the beginning of time, around the time of the Big Bang. Um, Maybe this resolves the problem somehow. But I was trying to picture it. And so I was thinking, okay, so all these circles overlap. Maybe this has something to do with the map principle, right? So the map principle, I forget exactly what it stands for, um, but it basically says that everything is defined by everything else. So if you have one part of reality, that part of reality is defined by everything else in reality. And so if an event occurs in reality, that event has to reference all of reality. And so the way that I'm interpreting that is okay, and this is looking a lot like the MU diagram right here. Um, every event that happens, there's feedback that goes up to the unary entity. So maybe this is what we call the global operator descriptor, and then it goes back down because there has to be consistent syntax. And the syntax is really up here. This is what holds everything together. And this is the semantics at the bottom. This is like the events that are occurring, but also the events that are occurring, the semantics of the universe is also a medium that is creating more in the future. So this medium is creating. This is also syntax. So this is, I believe that's hology, on the principle of hology. Everything is syntax. It's creating more semantics. So maybe it has something to do with this feedback. Maybe this is why I'm confused. Um, and Chris Langan did say something sort of related to that, I believe, when he was explaining conspansion to someone else. It has to go up to the global operator descriptor and back down, right? So I want to show specifically what I mean here. I know that the going up and then back down to the global operator descriptor, that explains how one point can influence another point. But specifically in the 2002 paper, we have this here. So space-time, and maybe I'm interpreting this incorrectly, but space-time can be illustrated in terms of a layering of such Venn diagrams, mutual contact among which is referred to as extended superposition. In the real world, Venn diagrams are three-dimensional rather than planar. Circles are spheres, and layering is defined accordingly. So, like, we need to have this crossover, right? The way that I'm interpreting this is that these circles have to intersect. We have to have that intersection event taking place in order for there to be an extended superposition, right? Um, so and this is not a troll. Like I'm not trying to troll, I'm not trying to criticize. Um, but I'm distressed because I agree and I think I understand the rest of the CTMU, but I don't understand this. Um, the universe is a self-representational entity doesn't seem to be able to account for this, but I'd like to see why my thinking is incorrect. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I'd appreciate it if someone can give me really simple answers to this, maybe with timestamps, maybe with drawing a picture. Maybe a picture is what I can understand the best. So yeah, I'd appreciate if someone could help me out with this. Thank you.